Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. I hope you guys are doing great. I hope you're having a really good week. We have what I think is a super interesting topic tonight. So we all know that there is a huge affordability crunch when it comes to real estate. We all know that young people, millennials, Gen Z, fill in the blank, are having a really difficult time affording real estate. So time to get creative, right? So we're going to talk about a new method of house hacking, and it's not really new, but it's not your typical sense of house hacking. So, typically when we think of house hacking, that's the term given to people that usually will buy a duplex, and which is 2 units. So a duplex is 2 units, a triplex is 3, a quadplex is 4, and usually it's when someone buys a duplex and they will live in one unit of the duplex and then rent the other unit out. Then what they do is they use the income from that unit, the rent from their tenant, and they use that to help offset their mortgage. It'd be similar like if you bought a house that had a back house and then you bought it and rented the back house out and got some income from that. That's kind of been the traditional sense of house hacking, but it's changing a little bit. And now what some millennials and Gen Zers are doing is they're house hacking, but they're house hacking with their friends. So they're actually buying real estate with their friends. So it's kind of like the next level up of being a roommate. Like you are going to be roommates, but instead of being roommates in a rental, like you're roommates in your house that you own. And so we're going to talk about the benefits to that. We're going to talk about some possible drawbacks. And we're also going to talk about things to be aware of if you're thinking about doing something like this. So we've got a couple articles to go through. I see my good friend David is in the chat. David, hey, how you doing? Thanks for stopping by. Hope you're having a great week. So we are going to get started here. Let me throw this up on the screen. And as always, you guys kind of know the drill. We're going to go over some articles, but if you have any questions or comments at any time, pop them into the chat. I'm always super stoked to hear from people, and I want to know what's going on in your real estate market. And I also want to know, like, would you ever consider buying a property with your friend? Is that something that you would ever consider in your life? Obviously, you got to have a really good relationship with that person. There's a lot of things, and we're going to go over all that. But pop into the chat. Do you think that buying real estate with your friend is a good idea? And now that could be like two things, right? You could be buying a real estate as your main residence, as your principal residence to live in, but you could also be buying real estate with a friend as an investment. And that could make a potential difference too. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different scenarios. We're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. We've got 3 good articles. The first one is really, really good. And it was published a little bit earlier this year. And it's the one that you're seeing up on the screen now. It is from Bankrate, which is actually an outlet that I really like. What I feel like they just put out some really good information, pretty unbiased and just good material and information to be aware of. So this is from Bankrate. And this is millennials lead the charge in solo home purchases after buying with friends and family, defying norms. So this one's going to talk about how millennials have switched to like solo home buying, but then also are leading the way when buying with friends. And it's just really interesting to see what millennials have to do and how different it is in comparison to some of the previous generations. But again, we're in a very unique real estate market. We have a huge supply crunch in a large majority of the United States. We don't have a supply crunch in all of the states in the nation. We have some areas that are getting a little bit more supply, like Florida and Texas. But for the most part, generally speaking, the supply crunch is super, super real, and it's felt. And it's making it difficult for people to afford homes because when we have low supply and we have high demand, prices go up. And it's hard to make more homes. We've talked about this on previous live streams. It's much more difficult to fix a supply problem when it comes to things like housing in comparison to pretty much any other product or asset. I mean, even when it comes to cars, like during COVID, we had a car shortage and cars got super expensive. But then, as the supply chain got back up and running, as computer chips were, back in production, we were able to relatively quickly, like within a year or two, we were able to alleviate that supply issue. And now, there's cars on every dealership lot. However, with homes, it's not quite that way. And it's really, really hard to build new homes because of the cost of land, legislation, bureaucracy, the approval and permitting process. So millennials are having to get creative. So let's dive into this article. And I want to know what you guys think. So if you guys have opinions, thoughts, questions, pop it in the comments below, and be happy to hear what you guys have to say. So millennials are buying homes differently than their older counterparts, and in many ways are redefining home ownership norms. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys. There we go. While purchasing a home with a domestic partner or spouse has been the most common way to buy a home across all generations, a higher percentage of millennials, those aged 28 to 43, have bought homes in other ways, such as alone, with a friend or relative other than a domestic partner or spouse, according to Bankrate's new home buying trends survey. It's a significant contrast from older generations who've primarily purchased their homes with their spouses and domestic partners. And that's kind of the way that, it was just the norm. That was like the cultural and societal norm, is you purchased a home with a longtime girlfriend or boyfriend, or you purchased a home, when you got married, right before you got married, or, right after you got married. And now obviously things are changing. 42% of millennials have purchased a home alone, compared to 34% of Gen Xers ages 44 to 59. So like the next generation directly above millennials. So you can see right there, that's a 8% increase in solo home buying experiences for millennials, which is a pretty drastic increase. 22% of baby boomers bought homes by themselves. So much lower. I mean, that's almost double for millennials than it is for baby boomers. 1 in 10 millennials, I like how they did that. 1 in 10 millennials, or 10%, thank you for that, clarifying that, Bankrate, has purchased a home with a friend, and 7% have bought one with a relative other than their domestic partner or spouse. So, that would be like buying a home with your mom or your uncle or a cousin or something like that. So we're seeing, people are getting resourceful, they're getting creative, they're trying to figure out ways to get around that affordability crunch. All right, David, what do you got for me? I can see this is an upcoming trend, but people have to plan the exit up front before they buy. You're 100% right, David, and I agree with you. I think this is something that we're going to see more and more of. Again, necessity is the mother of invention. And right now, property is really expensive. Real estate's very expensive, but the necessity is that you need to live somewhere. And I don't care what anybody says. People still want to buy homes. People want to own homes at the end of the day. And you're exactly right. And we're going to talk about some of this. We're going to talk about what needs to be in place before you actually dive into buying a home with a relative or friend, because as you sort of alluded to, David, there's a lot that could get sticky. Of course, the payoff is great. The payoff is that you could make a lot of money. You can have secure housing. You don't have to worry about rent increases. You can modify the home the way that you see fit, so on and so forth. So a lot of pros, but a lot of potential cons that need to be addressed. And we will get into that. Housing experts attribute the increase in solo home purchases among millennials to evolving generational attitudes toward marriage. Pew Research Center data shows younger Americans are increasingly delaying or foregoing marriage altogether, but their attitudes towards home ownerships haven't changed as much. Owning a home continues to be a cornerstone of the American dream for most millennials, and most are willing to be more flexible in their approach to what's become a challenging housing market. So basically, as we just kind of said, this is the kind of the need that millennials are seeing. Hey, if I can't do it by myself, I still want to get it done, but I might need a little bit of help from my friend. More millennials have also opted to buy homes with friends and relatives compared to older generations. A decade ago, this might have seemed like a far-fetched idea. Yet high mortgage rates, rising home prices, and tight inventory have made finding affordable homes tough, leading to some millennials to turn to their friends and family members to split the costs and sooner achieve their dreams of owning a home. Here's a quote from Selena Trevino, 27-year-old first-time homebuyer in the Portland metro area. I decided to buy a house alone because I didn't want to wait for marriage. I've always been someone who's been super independent and ambitious. I always do things on my own. So once the opportunity was there, I wanted to use it while I had it. And she's right. If you're in that position, if you're able to afford a home on your own, hey, it's a great idea. You start building equity. I mean, this young lady bought a home at 27 years old by herself. That is quite an amazing accomplishment. And the Portland metro area is not a super cheap market. That's not a mega affordable market. The Portland metro area is very competitive and very sought after. So no easy feat by any stretch of the imagination. So here's some key insights on millennial home buying. U.S. homeowners most commonly have purchased a home with a domestic partner or spouse, 59%. Just under a third of U.S. homeowners, about 30%, have bought a house alone. Millennials are more likely than older generations to have purchased a home alone, 42%. Roughly a third of Gen Xers, 34%. And just 22% of baby boomers have made solo home purchases. So again, you can see some of the numbers we went over before. Millennials are almost twice as likely to buy a home by themselves in comparison to baby boomers making solo home purchases. 47% of millennials have purchased a home with a domestic partner or spouse, compared to 70% of baby boomers and 56% of Gen Xers. So we can kind of see as times go on and as social and cultural norms shift a little bit away from early marriage and shifting away to people being married later in life, we're starting to see that the shift of 47 millennials purchasing a home with a domestic partner as compared to 70%. So a huge difference when it comes to baby boomers and millennials, which is not uncommon. Baby boomers and millennials differ in a lot of statistics, actually. Millennials are more likely to have purchased a home with a friend, 10%, than Gen Xers, just 3%, and baby boomers, just 1%. So by this metric, millennials are 10 times likelier to have purchased a home with a friend as compared to baby boomers. Millennials are more likely to have purchased a home with a relative other than a domestic partner or spouse, 10%, than Gen Xers, Gen Xers, 5%, or baby boomers at just 2%. Millennials are redefining traditional home ownership. Among U.S. homeowners, the most common way to purchase a home is with a domestic partner or spouse. We know this. This holds true across each age group, but it's much more common among older generations. Personally, I have not worked with the friend buying couple. I've worked with solo people buying a home. I've worked with obviously married couples and long-time established couples. Maybe they're not married yet, but maybe they're planning on getting married in the near future. Maybe they've been together for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, very comfortable with each other, and that's quite common. But I in my career, I have not yet experienced friends going together to buy a home. But I think it's going to, like David said earlier, I think it's going to be something that kind of ticks up in popularity, because as the barrier to home ownership continues to rise with prices, interest rates, property taxes, property insurance, maintenance, all of these things, it's getting more and more difficult for a single person to afford a home. I mean, if you think about it, the average income in my area, which is Los Angeles, about $80,000. You cannot afford an average priced home. But if your friend also has an average income of $80,000, now you're working with $160,000 a year to work with. And now all of the sudden, with $160,000 in good credit, now between the both of you, you can start to have some options when it comes to affording a home. You're going to have much higher pre-approval in terms of your budget for looking for a home. So the options certainly increase. So I do think this is going to be something that becomes much more common, especially since the real estate market is not really slated to get more affordable anytime soon. Sorry for all you crash bros in the watching the stream and in the chat. I do not believe the real estate market's going to crash. And you're more than welcome to fight me in the comment section about that if you'd like. 70% of baby boomer homeowners and 56% of Gen X homeowners have purchased a home with a domestic partner or spouse, whereas just 47% of millennials have done so, according to our home buying trends survey. The second largest share of U.S. homeowners purchased a home alone. Millennials, who make up the majority of home buyers, were more likely than older generations to have bought a home alone at 42%. In comparison, 34% of Gen Xers and 22% of baby boomers have made solo home purchases. So, as you can see, my chair just deflated. There we go. As you can see, this is definitely something geared towards the younger generations. And I would love to see how Gen Z gets into the mix with this. Gen Z is not really in the prime home buying stage yet, but we are seeing that Gen Z is starting to kind of bring the heat when it comes to purchasing properties. In fact, I saw a stat recently that talked about Gen Z outpacing millennials for home buying at the same age. So obviously millennials are older. They've purchased more homes than Gen Z. But when millennials were at age of 24 compared to Gen Z at age 24, Gen Z is actually outpacing the home buying of millennials given the same time. So really, really interesting. Hey, innovative. Hey, that's good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of the stream, and I'm glad you're watching. And feel free, if you have any conflicting opinions, I'm all for a friendly chat and debate. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you being here. This is a really interesting graphic. I'm actually going to make the screen a little bit smaller so that we can see a little bit more at one time. So this is at the top, you'll see overall millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers. And this is basically breaking it down in terms of percentage. So this basically says that let's go to baby boomers. So here you're going to see 70% purchased a home with domestic partner and spouse. 22% purchased a home by themselves, and just 2% with a domestic partner or with a relative that wasn't a domestic partner or spouse. So what I want to do is I'm going to click through the different generations, and we're going to see how this graph has moved. So again, this is boomers, heavily leaning towards they purchased it with a domestic partner or spouse. And when you add up domestic partner or spouse and by themselves, I mean, that's pretty much everything. The interesting part is other. I would love to know what this other means, because I kind of feel like we've exhausted, all of the criteria. I feel like we've exhausted domestic partner or spouse by yourself, by a relative that's not your spouse, by relatives other than domestic partner, and with a friend. Like, what's left? What is this other 6%? Like, I'm not exactly sure what this is. So, hey, Henry, how's it going? Thanks for popping into the stream. Glad you could stop by. Let me know if you have questions at any time. So so this is baby boomers. Let's see what Gen X did. So keep our eye on the top two. Like, these are the two kind of ones that we really, really want to know about, are these top three kind of statistics. So Gen X, let's see the change. So huge decrease, right? So from 70 to 56 purchased their homes by themselves, purchased their homes with their domestic partner, and 34% purchased homes by themselves. You can see the uptick here. I purchased a home with a relative other than my domestic partner or spouse at 5%. Yeah, David, that's what I thought too, but I think that would fall under this category of, like, I purchased a home with a relative other than my domestic partner or spouse. So I would assume that would mean like uncle, cousin, grandpa, grandma, but maybe I'm wrong. I could be right. I could be wrong. I might not be right on this, because you have by yourself with a relative other than domestic partner or spouse, you have with a friend, and then I purchased a home with multiple relatives, and then I purchased a home with multiple friends, and then there's this other. So I'm like, I don't know, like, what is that? Like, I wish they would have said other includes something, but I don't know. If you've got an idea, let me know in the chat. Maybe I'm overlooking something. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, right. That's what I thought too. So kind of interesting. So anyways, we'll get back to the stats here. So as you can see, so we're at baby boomers here, and there's been a huge increase in buying by themselves and with a relative other than domestic partner. I mean, the other two have increased too, but only a couple percent. So not noticeable. But then let's get to millennials. And now there's millennials. So just 47% with a domestic partner spouse, 42% by themselves. I mean, that's almost equal. So as you can see, millennials are really kind of embracing the independence. And I think this doesn't have just to do with millennials wanting to buy a home by themselves. I think that this is a overarching social theme that goes beyond the scope of this stream, right? I think that this would be like some kind of societal psychology going into play here. But, things are happening later in life. People are buying homes later in life. People are getting married later in life. People are typically starting families and having children later in life. And I think all of these things are pushing millennials to do some things, sort of quote unquote out of the societal order or the norm of the societal order. And I think one of the things is buying a home. Here, a huge increase, 10% purchased a home with a friend. Again, just 2% for baby boomers. It's pretty wild. So really interesting graph, really interesting statistic that really breaks down, buying property with a friend or a non-domestic partner or spouse relative is increasing. And this isn't, let's make something clear too. Like, let's say I'm looking to buy a house and my grandma says, hey, you know what, Joe, you've been a great grandson. I want to help you buy your house. I'm going to give you $20,000 towards your down payment. That's not counting in this, right? So gift funds for a down payment or assistance with, like, I know I had a client who said, oh, in order to help me out, my parents are going to pay for my first 3 years of property tax. Like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a nice way to do it, right? So we're not counting, when people get help from relatives to buy the home. We're talking about these people are signing the offer. They're going on title. They're signing the deed. They have ownership stake in this home. They're not just helping their millennial, kid or grandkid buy the home. So interesting to kind of see how all this breaks down. And of course, just the difference between major generations. I'm kind of excited to see the stats when Gen Z is more in that prime home buying age. Really wouldn't be appropriate to compare them with these three generations because they've just had much longer to purchase property. But, millennials buying homes with friends is certainly something that's taking off. And so here, this is talking about this, this millennial, here she bought a home in the Portland metro area. Good for her. And she was able to do it. So I kind of want to talk now. There's another article here. This one goes on, and this is a really good article, and there's a lot. I can link you guys to this if you want to kind of keep reading further. In fact, I'll put it in the chat right now. There you go. That should be showing up shortly. So if you guys want to read this article further in depth, it keeps going, but it's a really, really good article. I just don't want to bore you guys with reading all this stuff. This was another graph that I wanted to bring up really quick before I go on to the next one. I love these interactive statistics. It's really cool. So this one talks about what millennials, Gen Xers, and baby boomers would sacrifice for affordable housing. So baby boomers are saying, hey, they're, of course, the big one is downsizing, right? Like, that's their big thing, is they're in that kind of age range and age group where they are excited to downsize. They're looking to downsize. They don't need the big home. Another third of them say, hey, move out of state. Another third say, buy a fixer upper. And it kind of dwindles from there. Millennials, we're just compare baby boomers and millennials. So millennials, it's much more even. Millennials basically are saying, like, I don't care what I have to do for affordable housing. I don't care if it's move to a less desirable area. I don't care if it's move further away. I don't care if it's buy a fixer upper, move out of state, downsize. It doesn't matter. I just want affordable housing, which is completely understandable, right? Completely understandable. So this just talks about some tips and things like that, but we don't need to get into that. So we're going to now go to this tab. And this is an article that's kind of going to talk about some tips when it comes to buying with friends. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see. There we go. That's a little bit easier. Get rid of this ad. There we go. And if you guys are hanging out, I appreciate everybody that's hanging out in the stream. Got some good viewership. If you're enjoying the stream, please drop a like. Consider subscribing to the channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps out the channel and it helps out my stream. We just hit 200 subscribers like yesterday, so like cue the confetti and the party for our 200 subscribers. So thanks everyone for being here. This article is super interesting. This one is buying a house with friends. avoid disaster with these tips. Now, as you guys know, I always try to keep up with recent articles. Because this one didn't have to do with like recent news, I went back actually about a year to get this article. So you'll see this came out October of 2023, but the principles still remain the same, right? So this is, thank you. Thanks, Henry and Cynthia. Appreciate your support. Thank you. Appreciate it, David. Thank you. Thank you. We're growing. We're growing. We're growing. Oh, we have a comment from the self-proclaimed Crash Bro. All right, Innovative, what do you got for me? Is it cheaper to rent than buy in your city? How far do interest rates need to fall, ballpark, before that changes? Right now, I rent in Dallas, 1,700 square foot single family for $1,900 a month. This is a really, really good question. And I'm going to do my best to not take the cheesy way out and just say, well, it depends. But I will preface this with, it really depends. But you made a good point. You said in my city. So in my city, I'm a suburb of Los Angeles. And based on the analysis that I've done and based on a lot of my clients that have this same question, typically what I tell them is there's two things we need to look at. We can look at the numbers, and then we can kind of take a look at the situation, the context. It's a little bit more intrinsic and less concrete, data driven. The first thing is if you're looking at the numbers, it looks like typically in my area, it is more cost effective to rent for about 3 to 4 years, depending on where you are. In those first 3 to 4 years, the fact that you don't have to put a down payment down, the fact that probably your rent is going to be equal or probably slightly less to a mortgage payment is going to be in your favor. You don't have to factor in things like maintenance, all of those things. You're a smart guy. I know that you get it, so I'm not going to explain all of those things to you. But when you start to factor the appreciation that you're missing out on in terms of what you could have been earning, it is an unrealized gain, but nonetheless, it's a gain that you should be factoring in. So there's appreciation that you're missing out on in the time that you are not owning the home. There's also, because there's appreciation increase, that means that prices continue to go up or projected to continue to go up. So as appreciation increases, the price to entry for you is going to increase. Plus, you don't get the intrinsic values, right? So your rent's going to go up. It's not going to go up with a mortgage payment. Now, depending on where you are, your mortgage payment can increase. That's a common misconception, right? But in my area, again, because you asked the question for my city, in California, our property taxes are capped at 2% per year. So I really don't have to worry about my mortgage rate increase or my mortgage payment increasing because my property taxes are only going to go up a very small amount. And obviously your principal and interest is not going to change. The only way it would change is if I refinanced, which is my choice to refi. The only way I'm refining is if I can get a lower rate. So to make your long story short, I would say numbers wise, analysis wise, it's about 3 to 4 years. Renting is better than purchasing. But if you're planning on being in that property for more than 4 years, it's really a good idea to purchase. If you are going to need the flexibility of moving around, don't purchase. If you have a job that's going to require you to move, or if you're not certain if you're going to have to move, or if you're not certain you're going to set down roots, don't purchase a home, especially in my area because the cost entry is too high. But if you have a stable relationship, if you've got good income, if you feel good about your job, if it's where you want to be for the long term, then after about 4 years, it's better to buy. I hope that answers your question, Innovative. If it didn't, let me know. If you have a counterpoint, love to hear it and appreciate you bringing up that question for me to talk about. So while Innovative is thinking about a response or coming up with another question, we're going to dive into buying a house with friends. Avoid disaster with these tips. Buying a house with friends is doable as long as everyone understands their responsibilities and has the same goals, which is extremely, extremely important. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you found the answer to be acceptable. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. It's important that the responsibilities and the goals, everybody understands them, right? Like basically a good way to think about this is like going into business, right? You are not just being a roommate with someone. You're not just living with someone. you are basically going into business with this person or these people. So it's really, really important that you have very clear rules, guidelines, protocols, all that stuff, because these people could be people that make you money and help you prosper in life and provide home ownership for you, or it could be a real nightmare. So let's get into this article. When most people think of buying a house, it's usually with a partner or spouse, but co-ownership is possible with anyone, whether it's a partner, family member, or a group of friends. Pooling your resources can not only significantly boost your buying power, it can make home ownership much more affordable than if you were to buy a house alone, which is absolutely true. Like we talked about earlier, I mean, is it going to be easier to buy a house on a $50,000 income or a $100,000 income? I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Today's home buying market and high housing costs are often daunting enough that many prospective home buyers can consider buying a home with a non-relative roommate, says Bob Driscoll, Senior Vice President and Director of Residential Lending for a Massachusetts-based Rockland Trust Bank. However, a home purchase is a big financial commitment, and there is some risk when buying a house with friends. Is buying a house with friends a good idea? Pros and cons of buying a house with friends, how to buy a house with friends, and buying a house with friends versus as a married couple. So these are all things that we're going to get into, and this is the good stuff. This is the important stuff. If you're thinking about doing this, if you're thinking about co-buying and co-owning with a friend, turn up the hearing aids, get a beverage, tune in, because this is the important stuff. Okay. So is buying a house with friends a good idea? Each person has their own level of risk tolerance, says Driscoll, and it's important to understand what you're getting into beforehand. The complications and risks that come with this decision may outweigh the good that can come from it, he adds. Whether or not buying a house with friends is a good idea also depends on your goals and financial situations. And this is very true. Again, you need to have the same goals, and it's very helpful if you're in a very similar financial situation. For instance, if one friend makes $80,000 a year and the other friend makes $30,000 a year, this might be a relationship that doesn't work out because obviously one friend is going to have a little bit of more of a financial burden than the other. And last thing you want is your business partner to be financially burdened. Buying a house with friends can be a good idea if you have a trusting and compatible relationship and share similar financial goals with the objective to build equity together, compounded with potential tax savings, says Nicholas Genoveski, Global Real Estate Advisor at Premier Sotheby's International Realty in Tampa, Florida. Pros and cons of buying a house with friends. So here are several pros and cons to consider. Pros of buying a house with friends. You can buy more house. Again, we talked about that. Obviously, you're going to buy more house because you're going to have roughly double the income, right? That really, really helps. Because you and your friends are dividing the monthly mortgage payment, you may be able to afford a larger home in a better area than if you were to purchase a loan. This method can be very effective, especially in that it can put you in a position to qualify for a larger loan, basically helping you afford more square footage, says Rebecca Aram, mortgage advisor at Seniors Lending Center in British Columbia, Canada. 2 incomes and 2 down payments combined go a lot further than one. And this is nothing new, right? I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. This is nothing new. I mean, same happened when you were like in college and you were looking for a rental apartment, right? If you tried to rent an apartment by yourself, you were like going to get like a cardboard box. It was going to be like roach infested. It was going to be no good. But if you got a 2-bedroom apartment with a friend, yeah, okay, a 2-bedroom is slightly more expensive, but now you're bringing your friend in. They're going to help you split that rent, split utilities, split the household expenditures. All that's going to be super helpful. And the same applies when you're purchasing a home. Obviously, when you're renting, it's a little bit easier for the other person to just be like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. End the lease, whatever. You're not on the hook for anything. When it comes to home ownership, it's a little bit different. Pros and cons of buying a house with friends. So we already talked about you can buy more house. It's also easier to qualify for a mortgage. When you apply for a home loan, the mortgage lender will look at your and your friends' credit scores and income determine whether you qualify for a loan. You can also qualify for a better interest rate, which can lower your monthly mortgage payment. So whenever we get into credit, right, it's like, hey, the credit score is really important. And we've talked about this on the channel before. If you can get that credit score up, it's going to save you money. And it's going to save you money because your interest rate's going to be better because you're looked at as being less risky to whoever is lending you the money, typically a bank or a mortgage broker. So you want to be certain that your friend, whoever you're buying this property with, has a good credit score and is financially responsible when it comes to their credit, because their credit could affect how much you both get approved for and how much you can afford and what your interest rate will be, which can affect your monthly payment. So really important that you got to find a friend where you both have the same financial responsibility, same credit score. I mean, it doesn't have to be the same, but it helps to know that they're responsible, so that you know what you're getting into. What do you got for me, David? Let's see. Okay. It almost seems like the friends should rent together first to see if they can stand each other. This is a great idea, David. I think this is a phenomenal idea. Renting is almost like a test drive. And I don't know if it was this article. No. You know what? Actually, it was a video clip that I saw on YouTube while I was researching this information for the live stream. There was something on like I think it was CBS Money or something. They were talking about how like, hey, you should pick a friend that maybe you've vacationed with before. Maybe someone that you've spent extended period of time with, maybe a friend that you've rented with before or was a roommate. That's who you should probably be looking to purchase with, right? So David, you're 100% correct. Rent together first, make sure it's a good fit, test drive it. Because again, like I said, this is a business relationship. This is going to be your business partner. So it's really, really important that you can fully trust them and you guys are like-minded, have the same goals, have the same financial principles in life, because it's going to make things a lot easier. Innovative says, definitely, I rented a 3-bedroom in my early 20s with 2 of my buds. We loved it. Affordability is off the charts. And you know what? You're exactly right, Innovative. I did the same thing. Before I got married at the young age of 24. But from the time I was 21 to the time that I got married at 24, I lived with some friends. And I will tell you that one of the most fun periods of my life was for about 15 months, from 22 to 23. I rented a house. I rented a craftsman house in a little downtown area of the city that we lived in. My rent was super cheap. It was like $500 a month or something ridiculous. But on top of that, so much fun. We had so much fun. We played a bunch of music, played video games. It was just a really, really fun time in life. So not only do you get the benefit of huge affordability, but you also get hopefully you get to experience the fun that is living with your best friends and having a good time with them, and just being young and carefree. So good point, Innovative. Not only do you get great affordability, but you might get some cool memories out of it as well. Okay, so you can build equity sooner. So renting provides the flexibility. We kind of talked about that, but it's an unrecoverable cost, right? So you pay the rent and it's gone and that's it. However, owning a home allows you to build equity and accumulate wealth. So every time you make that rent payment, it's gone. Every time you make a mortgage payment, it's going back to your house. So what I try to tell people is and this is for a lot of my clients that go from renting to buying, and they have a hard time going, oh man, my rent was $1,500. My mortgage is going to be $2,000. Like, oh my gosh, like I just don't want to lose $2,000 every month. I'd much rather just lose $1,500. I go, okay, we need to get your thought process corrected a little bit. We got to get your train of thought lined up, because when you make a rent payment, it's like writing a check from your checking account and it's going out and it's gone. But when you make a mortgage payment, think about that mortgage payment as a transfer from your checking account to your savings account, right? So it might be gone from your checking account. It might be, you might see that deduction come from your checking account, but that money is moving into your savings account. Now that savings account is not a savings account in a bank, but it's a saving account that's in the form of your house. It's in the roof, it's in your walls, it's in your floor, and it will come back to you. And it's going to come back to you and it's going to bring some friends with it if you ever, in the event that you sell the home. So something to think about. Innovative, every young man should get that experience. Yes. So we agree on that, Innovative. You're 100% correct. I'm a huge proponent of it. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about responsibility. You learn a lot about cooperation with others in your house, communication. There's a lot of great things you learn. I think every young person should spend a couple years living with friends to learn that dynamic, to learn how to live in a house with other people that's not your family. And like I said, chances are really good chance that you're going to have some fun while you do it too. So I agree with you. I think every young person should get that experience. Okay, so here's an interesting pro that I didn't consider originally before I read this article, but you can avoid paying mortgage insurance. So if you and your friends make at least a 20% down payment, you can avoid paying mortgage insurance. Otherwise, you could pay from 0.5% to 2% of your loan amount for your annual mortgage insurance premium. For a $250,000 mortgage, that could be $1,250 to $5,000 per year, which breaks down to $100 to $420 per month. PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, is a scam. It's a huge scam, and I'm just going to really briefly explain PMI to people that maybe don't get it. So PMI is a fee that your lender puts on your loan anytime you put less than 20% down. The larger the loan, the higher that PMI payment will be. It's usually a percentage, a portion. And the lower your credit is, the higher the PMI is. And basically, this fee was tacked on by mortgage brokers to negate the potential risk of you defaulting. And PMI came into play after 2008. And so banks said, man, 2008, everybody foreclosed. We lost like a bunch of money. We really took a beating. Like, oh, I feel so bad that these mega banks took a beating. But they took such a beating that they said, hey, we're going to charge a fee to people that have riskier loans. And a riskier loan is anything under 20%. And it's a money grab. It's a BS fee. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't go towards your principal. Doesn't go towards your interest, doesn't go to anything. It's just a fee that the bank gets to collect. And if you can make a down payment of at least 20%, you can avoid that. Now, a lot of people say, well, should I go in with a 10% down payment, or should I wait and save up to get to 20% to avoid PMI? And no, the PMI is not that much. It's a BS fee. It's going to cost you an extra 50, 100, 150 bucks a month, but it's not worth delaying the equity that you could accrue and build in that time frame. So moral of the story is try to get 20%. 20% is much better for the down payment. But if you can only put in, 15, 10, or heck, even 5, do it anyway, because you're going to start building equity sooner. You're going to get into the real estate market sooner, and you're probably going to get in before prices continue to escalate. So something to think about. Don't worry about PMI. It's not good. You don't want it, but it's no reason to change your course. But if you can get a 20% down payment with your friends, if you can each come up with 10%, now all of a sudden you can avoid that PMI and save a little bit more money. So now we'll get to the interesting one. Cons of buying a house with friends. Your friends' credit scores can negatively impact your mortgage. If one friend's credit score is much lower than everyone else's, that could mean a higher mortgage payment, right? We kind of talked about this. So if somebody's, pulling the credit score down, it could affect the loan that you all get, and you're all on the loan. You're all responsible for it. So something to keep in mind, you want to make sure those credit scores are nice and high. Typically anything over 700 is going to be okay. Anything over 750 is going to put you in a really, really good position. And really most lenders aren't going to care if it's over 750. If it's over 750, finally, you kind of just fall in that category of having excellent credit. But like I said, you really want to try to get above 7, but the higher, the better. It can be difficult to back out. So you're going to be tied to them financially in a way that's very difficult to undo. Aram says, who's a mortgage lender, while buying with a partner means you can pool your funds and share the costs, it's also important to consider what will happen if one partner wants out or struggles with their repayments. If this happens, you may be forced to sell the property to pay them back for their share of equity. So something to consider, right? Like at some point, just like with a business, if you have a business partner and you're in business for 3 years and that business partner says, you know what, I'm kind of over this. What are your options? Well, you either buy them out or you have to find someone to buy their share of the business. it can be a real problem. Or if you can't buy them out and you can't find someone that wants to buy their share of the business, and you can't inherit all the costs yourself, you're going to have to close. You're going to have to close up shop, which in this case would be equatable to selling the house, which is probably not a good idea. It could hurt your relationship. You could encounter disagreements over property decisions, differing financial capabilities, and the possibility of straining your friendship, Janoveski says. So again, yep, this is a great point, something to be aware of, that going into business with friends can be a blessing, but it can also kind of be a curse. So just be super crucial. Just be super critical of who you're going into business with. It can cause financial strain. All borrowers are equally responsible for the mortgage. If one friend can't pay their share of the mortgage, then the others must make sure that the payment is met. Non-payment of one homeowner is directly reflected onto the other homeowner, affecting their credit ratings and ability to apply for future loans, says Driscoll. Both borrowers are liable for the mortgage at all times, regardless of personal circumstances. And this can vary because with renting, sometimes you can say, hey, you know what, this can be my roommate, we're going to rent together, but he's going to do his own application, I'm going to do my own application, you're going to run his credit separately, you're going to run my credit separately. We want to be separate when it comes to responsibilities. Some landlords and owners don't go for that, but some do. But no mortgage lender is going to go for that. If you are on the deed, you are on the hook, and they will blame, whoever they can. All right, David, the only ship that doesn't sail is partnership. Yes, that's a good one. You are absolutely correct. All right, so how to buy a house with friends. You'll follow a similar home buying process as you would if you bought your home on your own, but the biggest difference is how you'll split ownership and hold title to the property. Here are some important topics of conversation to have with your friends before you buy a house together. Pick the right friends. Yeah, I would say this is a good rule number one. Pick the right friends. This type of arrangement can theoretically work with any friend as long as this friend agrees to the terms of the shared ownership and qualifies/can afford a mortgage, says Driscoll. But there are other factors to consider, he adds, including whether you lived together before, how confident you are in each other's finances, and more. Again, test drive, right? Test drive with your friend. It's super important to have some experience with these people that you're going into business with, right? Discuss ownership terms. Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped a little bit. Janoveski recommends finding someone who shares your financial values, has a stable income, and has a similar vision for the property. Open and honest communication is vital to ensure that everyone's needs and expectations are met. Discuss ownership terms. There are several ways to divide ownership of the property. The two main types of ownership are joint tenancy and tenancy in common. A joint tenancy gives each owner equal shares of responsibilities to the property. When one owner dies, their shares are automatically transferred to the surviving owners. A tenancy in common is another form of fractional ownership, equal or unequal, but when one owner dies, their shares are passed down to their heirs. There's a lot of different ways that you can hold title. They each have their own kind of little differences. Some of them overlap. The best thing to do is talk to a real estate attorney or a title representative to figure out how it could affect you in your situation, especially when you're buying with a friend and not a spouse or domestic partner. Divide responsibilities. One person can't take on all the responsibilities that come with homeownership. Split responsibilities among each owner and financial contributions when it comes to utilities, repairs, maintenance, and more. One article that I read when I was researching this said, hey, it's a really good idea to open up a joint savings account with both your names and contribute to that savings account every month. And that savings account is, what you use to pay your utilities out of. It's what you use for maintenance and repairs. It can also be used to pay the mortgage out of there. And then just as long as you're contributing the same amount each month, hey, I'm going to kick in $2,000. My buddy's going to kick in $2,000. Okay, we funded $4,000 to the savings account. We're going to take out our $2,900 a month mortgage. We're going to take out our $600 a month for bills. We've got a little bit left over for any type of maintenance, and whatever we don't spend stays in there and it grows on top of that. That's probably really the best way to do it. Plus, then you can all be accountable, right? If you've got two people, you're both on the savings account, you both get the online app, you can check in at any time and see how much money is in that account. Did the business partner / roommate / co-owner put in their fair share this month? Are they behind? Do we need to talk about this? It's going to make things much more transparent and clear. Put everything in writing. This is super important. Super, super important. I mean, obviously it's good to have contracts and actual binding agreements, but even if it just means it's an email, even if you just write an email that says, hey, roommate, co-owner, I'm just trying to let you know that we had a plumbing bill come up. One of the pipes got backed up. We had to get a router service out. It cost $600. I paid it on, with my credit card on this date, this time. I'm going to be withdrawing 300 from the shared account to, for the or whatever. That's at least you've got something in writing. At least you've got something in writing that has a time date stamp. It shows that they've received it. There's correspondence. At least that's something. Put everything in writing. Meet with an attorney and put together a cohabitation agreement. This type of agreement should cover property rights and financial obligations that come with living with another person. It is important to consult with a lawyer or a real estate professional to determine the best approach for your specific situation and to draft a legally binding agreement that outlines ownership percentages, responsibilities, and dispute resolution procedures. I would say that it's really just best to consult a lawyer. Don't worry about consulting a real estate professional for how to structure the agreement. I would consult a real estate professional when you're trying to, look at homes, evaluate homes, write an offer on a home, and buy a home. For sure, you should use a real estate professional. But when it comes to like drafting an agreement, I would definitely go with a lawyer, like a real estate lawyer or just a general lawyer, because that's going to be the better way to do it. In fact, if someone came to me and said, Joe, I'm looking at buying a home with my friend, can you help us draft an agreement? I would immediately refer them to a lawyer, because that's what lawyers do. Buying a house with friends versus a married couple. One benefit of marriage is the statutory legal protections that come with it. These laws protect the surviving spouse from losing their home and specify how property is to be divided when a couple gets a divorce. These don't apply to other relationships, but you and your friends can put together a legally binding contract with similar provisions. Remember, it's crucial to consult with professionals like real estate agents, lawyers, and financial advisors who specialize in shared ownership agreements. They can provide personalized guidance based on specific circumstances, which again is completely true. You have to remember that this is like a business, right? So when you're going to go into business with someone, the first thing you do is you decide, okay, who has what position? How much is the ownership? What's going to be the financial liability? All of these things. In fact, you might even want to start an LLC when you buy the home, put the home in the LLC, and then you could say, oh, I've got this much ownership, whatever, but always defer to the advice of legal counsel. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to advise you the best. They're going to give you the best information. They're going to be able to point you in the right direction and draw up one of these cohabitation agreements. It might seem like it's a lot of work. It might seem like it's not worth it, but I assure you that all good things in life are typically hard, right? All the things that are worth doing require some type of difficulty, right? Because if everything was easy, we would all have homes, we'd all have money, we'd all have amazing cars, but it's not that way. So if you think that it's too difficult, just remember, slow down, take a deep breath, put a plan together, and work with like-minded individuals. That's going to be the best thing that you can do. When you're vetting your friends, make sure that you are working with someone who's, again, like-minded, who has similar financial goals, a similar financial standing, and wants to see things that you want. It can be a little bit risky, but who knows? It could open your path to home ownership much sooner. Imagine you start building equity at 28 as opposed to 34. Imagine what difference that could be. Let's take a current situation, right? Imagine if you would have bought a house with a friend in 2019. And then imagine if you still own that house with a friend 5 years later in 2024. We all know what the market has done, right? The market has skyrocketed. I mean, you and your friend could have cleaned up, made maybe 100,000, couple $100,000 each. Now you go sell that house, you've pocketed 150K, and now maybe you can buy a house on your own or do whatever you want, maybe open a business on your own. So there's, a lot of good that can come from it. But I want to hear from you guys. Like, what, we've got a few minutes left on the stream. What would, after all this information, we've got a couple people watching right now. I see you guys out there in the chat. I want to know, based on what we talked about, would you buy a home with a friend or friends? Yes or no? Why? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? And what would you be afraid of? What would be your biggest fear? So I want to know, put it in the chat, put in the comments right now. Would you buy a home with a friend? Yes or no? And if you would, what would be like your biggest hesitation or fear? So while I'm waiting for you guys to drum up your answers, I want to talk about a little bit of an experience that I've seen other people have with this. I had a client come to me and say, I've got an opportunity to buy a property, but I don't know if I should take it because I'm nervous about taking the leap of homeownership. This person wasn't buying with a friend; they were just buying themselves. But it was a younger person, but he had a really good job. He worked for he had a union job. I don't know what union it was for, but he had a union job, very stable, good income, worked a lot, saved some money. And he goes, I'm just not sure if I should take the leap into homeownership. I'm kind of scared. I said, okay, well, what are you scared about? And he goes, well, I just don't know. First off, it's expensive. It's a lot of money up front. It's going to be a lot to maintain. There's taxes. I'm a handy guy. I'm not afraid of maintaining the home, but, I just don't know if it's right for me. And I said, I understand. This is extremely common. I deal with first-time home buyers all of the time. And they have this same remark. And I always tell them, similar thing that I just told you guys when it comes to buying with friends, fortune favors the bold, right? If you just stay comfortable your entire life, if you just take the easy route, the comfortable route, your potential for growth is going to be stymied. And chances are you're not going to grow. You need to be uncomfortable a little bit. You need to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, and you need to sometimes stretch. And now I'm not saying what you should do is you should just buy a home if you can't afford it. You should just go buy one right now and be uncomfortable. That's not what I'm saying. You should consult with a real estate agent. You should consult with a good lender, and you should make sure that you can actually afford the home. But if you can afford a home and you're just scared to do it, hey, I totally understand it. I totally get it. But chances are it's going to be a positive thing for you. It's going to be a benefit for you in the long run. Home ownership is the #1 wealth creator in the United States and probably the world. And it's the #1 wealth creator for the middle class. Real estate is typically a majority. I think it's like 86% of people out there. It's their largest asset is their real estate. So it's a huge, huge tool. And the sooner you start, the sooner you can see the benefits. Again, I'm not telling you to go out and buy a house. Buying a house isn't for everyone. It's not for everyone to do right now. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But in the case of my friend, it's one of those things where he ended up making the right decision. He was very sensible. He bought a small condo that was below his qualification limit. It was in an area that was affordable. You could say up and coming. It wasn't a super nice part of town, but it wasn't a terrible part of town. But it was going to be up and coming, and I think he made the right decision, and I think it's going to work out for him. And now he's talking about moving up, buying a house and renting that one out. So this guy could potentially already have his first income property, which, hey, good on him for that. All right, what do you guys got for me? David, no, afraid of them not paying and holding up their end of the deal. Yeah, that would be my concern too. It would take a very, very specific person for me to purchase a home with, and it would take a lot of vetting. I would have to know this person for a long time. I'd have to really, really be confident in their abilities and their skills. I can understand why you would say no to that. And quite honestly, that's a very legitimate fear. What if all of a sudden they just go, hey, I can't pay this month. And you're like, well, hey, this is going to be a problem because now I'm picking up the slack. So I totally get that. Cynthia and Henry, you have to be uncomfortable to be comfortable. You are exactly right. It's something that I am learning as I get a little bit older. Sometimes, hey, you got to get out of your comfort zone, right? And if you never get out of your comfort zone, you're not going to grow as a person. It's just, you won't have some of those things that you want in life. The easy road can be nice, but it can also be holding you back a little bit. And that could be professionally, could be with, investments and home ownership and real estate, but it could apply to, to anything else. So you're exactly right. That sometimes you just got to get a little bit uncomfortable, right? I remember, for instance, the first time I did my live stream, you guys should go back and watch my first live stream. It's freaking hilarious. I was very nervous. And now I've gotten much more comfortable with them. And now I get to hang out with you guys for an hour every week. And we get to talk about real estate. And it's awesome. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. And that's just my personal experience. Also professionally, I made some business decisions over the last year that, at first were very, very uncomfortable. And now I look back and I think, man, what a great decision. Should have made some of these changes sooner. So it's been great. So we are right up at an hour. Guys, you have been great tonight. The chat's been phenomenal. David, innovative, Cynthia and Henry, you guys have been all so great. I appreciate you guys hanging out. I appreciate all your questions and the dialogue and the comments. It's been a super fun stream. If you guys haven't already, drop a like on the stream. Please subscribe to the channel. Maybe one of you guys could be my 201st subscriber. And thank you for hanging out. I appreciate all of you guys. We will be back next week for another live stream. I don't know what the topic is going to be yet. I'm not sure. I think it might have something to do with the hidden costs of homeownership, but I'm not exactly sure. But if you guys want to talk about something specific, if you guys want me to bring up a specific topic, put it in the chat, put it in the comments. I would be happy to take a look at whatever topic you have, and perhaps we do it on a future live stream. As always, have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much for spending some of your very valuable time with me this evening. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your evening. I'll see you guys all next week.